It was a cold winter night when Mark and his wife Julia arrived at the old house. They had just gotten married, and this was their first trip together as husband and wife. Mark's uncle had invited them to stay in his vacation home far away from the busy city. The house was large, with tall windows and old wooden walls. Its shadowy corners made it look mysterious, almost unsettling. Julia shivered slightly as she stepped inside, though she smiled to hide her unease. This was supposed to be an adventure, their first memory as a couple away from the world. Mark's uncle, who lived nearby, met them at the front door and gave them a quick tour. "This house is old, but very special," he said. "Over the years, people have told stories about strange things happening here. But don't worry, it's all just old tales." Julia forced a laugh, but her nerves showed. Something about the house made her feel as if unseen eyes were watching her. That night after dinner, the couple went to bed. The house was silent, except for the occasional whistle of wind outside. Julia was drifting to sleep when she suddenly heard something, soft but clear. A low voice whispered her name, "Julia, Julia." Her eyes snapped open. She sat up in bed, scanning the dark room. No one was there, but the sound had been real. Her heart raced. She thought about waking Mark, but she didn't want to frighten him. Instead, she lay still, listening. The silence returned, broken only by her pounding heartbeat. The next morning, Mark asked if she had slept well. Julia hesitated. She didn't want to sound foolish, so she said nothing about the voice, but she couldn't stop thinking about it. Later that day, Mark decided to explore the house. He climbed the narrow staircase to the attic, where the wooden steps creaked beneath him. In the dim light, he saw an old book covered in dust, strange symbols etched into its surface. He lifted the lid and found an old photograph inside. It showed a woman standing in front of the house, smiling. But her smile was unnaturally wide, almost unnatural. Mark felt a chill run down his spine. Quickly, he closed the box and left the attic. Something about that photo disturbed him deeply. When he returned downstairs, Julia looked pale. Her eyes darted nervously toward the windows. "Are you all right?" Mark asked. "I keep hearing things," Julia whispered. "I think this house is haunted." Mark wanted to dismiss her fears, but he too felt uneasy. Something about the house seemed heavy, charged with an energy he couldn't explain. That night, as they lay in bed, the whisper returned. But this time, it called both of their names. Julia, Mark. Julia gasped and jumped out of bed. Mark, startled, followed her. They ran into the hallway, the shadows seeming to move along the walls as the temperature dropped. The whisper guided them to the attic door, which was slightly open. A faint voice drifted out. "Julia, Mark?" Mark pushed the door open, and they both froze. Inside, near the window, stood a woman in a long white dress. Her black hair hung loosely around her face, which was pale and empty of expression. Julia clutched Mark's hand. "Do you see her?" Mark nodded, unable to speak. The woman turned her head slowly. The room dropped to an icy cold. Her mouth opened, but no words came. Only a piercing cry that filled the house with sorrow. Terrified, Mark and Julia bolted, slamming the attic door behind them. Shaking, they tried to make sense of what they had just witnessed. The next day, Mark went to see his uncle. "Do you know anything about a ghost in the attic?" he asked. His uncle looked troubled. After a pause, he said, "There's an old story. Long ago, a woman lived in that house. Her husband left for America, promising to return, but he never did. They say she died of a broken heart. Some claim her spirit still waits by the attic window." Mark felt a chill. "Why didn't you tell us?" "I thought it was just a story," his uncle said quietly. That morning, Julia stood by the attic window. Snowflakes drifted outside, soft and quiet. She whispered, "She's still waiting." Mark joined her. "Do you want to leave?" Julia shook her head. "No, I want to help her." They began searching the house for clues. In an old drawer, Julia found a diary. Its pages were fragile and yellowed. She opened it carefully. It was the woman's diary. Her name was Eleanor. She wrote about her husband, Thomas, who had gone to America to find work. He promised to return, but he never did. One line read, "I wait by the window every day." Julia's eyes filled with tears. "This is why she can't move on," she said. Mark nodded. "She's trapped by her grief." They showed the diary to Mark's uncle, who admitted he remembered stories about Eleanor. She had been seen at the attic window for years, always waiting. Mark and Julia went to the library, searching old records. They found a photograph of Thomas. He was a kind-looking man. An article revealed his ship had sunk. His body was never found. Perhaps Eleanor never believed he was gone. Perhaps she kept waiting. That night they returned to the attic. Julia carried the diary while Mark lit a candle. Softly, Julia spoke into the cold air. "Eleanor, we know your story. We're sorry for your pain. Thomas loved you, but he's gone. You don't need to wait anymore. You can rest." The room chilled as a breeze swept through the closed windows. Eleanor appeared again, her sad eyes fixed on them. She raised her hand. Julia stepped forward and placed the diary in her palm. Eleanor looked down, a tear sliding down her cheek. She pressed the diary to her chest, closed her eyes, and slowly faded away. The attic grew warm. Silence filled the space. She was gone. The next morning, the house felt lighter, brighter. The sense of being watched was gone. In the attic, the photo of Eleanor showed her smiling, not wide and eerie, but soft and human. "She's at peace now," Julia whispered. They stayed 2 more nights, each evening lighting a candle in the attic to honor Eleanor. Julia often sat by the window, imagining Eleanor's endless wait. Love that strong, she thought, was both beautiful and tragic. On the 3rd day, they packed their bags. Mark paused at the attic door. "It feels like she's really gone," he said. Julia nodded. "Yes. The house is finally resting before leaving." She placed a flower on the stairs. "For Eleanor," she whispered. As they drove away, Julia glanced back at the house. For the first times, it looked like a home. On their way back, they stopped at a small coffee shop. Near the fire, Julia asked, "Do you think there are more ghosts like her?" "Maybe," Mark said. "People who wait too long. People who just need someone to help them let go." He reached into his bag and pulled out the diary. "I brought it." Eleanor's story shouldn't be forgotten. Julia smiled. Maybe we can write her story one day. Just then, an old man entered the shop. He stared at the diary, his eyes widening. That book. I've seen it before. Julia leaned forward. Do you know Eleanor? The man nodded. When I was a boy, my mother worked in that house. Eleanor used to sit at the window every day, talking about her husband. Julia asked gently, What happened to Thomas? The man sighed. No one really knew. But some said he came back years later, old, sick, broken. By then, Eleanor was gone. He wept at her grave, then disappeared forever. Julia's eyes filled. She never knew he returned. Maybe now she does, Mark said softly. They thanked the man and left. Back home, Julia placed the diary on a shelf. Some nights, she would read its pages, feeling close to Eleanor. Mark would sit beside her, and together they remembered the woman who had waited too long. The house still stood, but it was quiet now. Eleanor was gone. Only her love remained. And in their hearts, the story would never be forgotten.